just to be really clear, make sure like we're on the same page. This is your movement monitor. And so what this does is it captures a lot of data for moving averages, multiple, right? So if you were to take price action and you were to put it up against a one moving average, it would be real time. It would just be a line that represents real time price action, right? 1x moving average. And so what traders will do, is they'll come up with numbers that kind of create somewhat of an average of the price action, right? And what they'll do is they'll use whether it's 7, exponential moving averages or 7 simple moving averages. Exponential is just another variable that speeds it up even more. So they'll do that with numbers, right? Whether this is a 7 moving average, this represents 9, like the average of 9 candles. This represents the average of 20 candles of price action. And so the longer the moving average or the higher the number, the slower it is to react. So a 200 period moving average is really slow. It can be in a whole different area, right? Like if we look at where Bitcoin's 200 period moving average is, it's like actually way below current price action. I think, just from what I recall, it's like in the 50s or something, because it takes that long for current price action, or it takes that extreme of a move to really bring the average of price action over a 200-day period to that place on the chart, right? So they're very slow to move. And again, fastest would be a 1x moving average, which nobody uses. We don't use because it's real-time price action. It would just be a line that represents the price. So if you know that, then moving averages themselves are involved there. And the next thing it incorporates, and this is kind of what I think gives it its power when it comes to orange. So when it comes to green, it's basically what I call loose bullish. And then when it comes to red, it's loose bearish, which generally means, like for our purposes, that it's technically more bearish than bullish, but there's not necessarily evidence that, if we're just looking at that time frame, that make conditions conducive to a short, and if it's just loose bullish, it could be, you could long it, but they're not really like extreme enough conditions to like count on a long, right? So for our purposes, because we're using these algos and doing things a little differently, we're looking more for orange and blue, right? So orange for our purposes for this line would mean that not only are the moving averages good, but also we have behind the scenes, we have sensitive trend math being done. We have volume, as far as like the volume of trading being done on that asset, right? So volume analysis is being done. And we have money flow analysis. So it's measuring money flowing into the asset or out of the asset in conjunction with sensitive trend, literally mathematics, as well as volume assessment, and the moving average data now. And so the way that I kind of like made these work is only when those conditions are met would it turn orange, or only when these conditions are met for the bearish side of things does this turn blue. It's still just statistics, and they work really, really well. So that's great, but it's not, and you know this already, but since this is going on a video, I want to like make clear, it's not, I wouldn't say fortune, but future telling, right? I think a lot of people can get confused with that, like, oh, it tells the future. It's like, no, it doesn't do that, but it gives you enough statistics to where a lot of times if you bet on, you know, this data, you end up being right. So that's kind of like more so what we're, you know, seeking to do. And so that I would say is how, you know, on average, in the simplest, you know, way to explain it, which is not that simple, how we get orange or how we get blue. So if the moving average data is what it needs to be, then we have the prerequisite to turn, again, orange or blue, depending on which way it's going. If the trend analysis, where it's actually assessing, you know, in different ways, if a trend is breaking, right? So like, for instance, we're not necessarily doing the math on trends 24/7, but the movement monitor is. And so just as a kind of like a example that would make sense to me in my head, if the math works on that thing to where it sees a trend going from, you know, that slope to that slope, and it's breaking something that has existed for a while before, then it's gonna basically spot that, and then that's one of the factors that makes it more likely to turn orange, right? So as far as trend math, so in other words, if it's only breaking trend, like, I don't know, just whatever the math is, right? But if it's only breaking trend like this much, for instance, then that thing's not probably gonna turn. It's not gonna like give you that data. But if whatever the math is, if there's just enough of a trend to where it recognizes it, which is why when I talk about it, I call it sensitive. If there's just enough of a trend change that it feels, you know, that it's worthy of meeting that prerequisite in sensitive trend, then it will shift. And so fortunately, we don't have to draw these things and do all that math. We just literally get to wait and look and see if it turns orange. That was the old way of doing it, and that was cool enough. I liked that way. It was fine, right? I just say, oh, look, it's orange. And then so that's what that would be the first orange in what we talk about. Actually, the bar is, right? Orange on orange. But this was the second orange. When we talk about orange on green, that's this right here, the orange bar with the orange line with the green volatility cloud. That was kind of like the old school, for our purposes, you know, a few months ago, really, like 4 months ago, way of finding something bullish. And it was pretty effective. But in a choppy environment like this one here, you can see that it's easy to not last that long either. So the goal was to try to find more timely and more meaningful opportunities. And so then we kind of had to create something that would do that. So that's the sensitive trend math. Volume itself is this right here, right down here at the bottom. If I got rid of all this other stuff and I look at just the old school, where is it? I just want to hide it. Ah, there it is. If I just look at the old school volume stuff, this is it, right? So this is volume. This right here, if I wasn't looking at the chart at all, I would just look at this and I'd say, okay, there was this much volume here in like quantity, and then there was this much volume here in quantity, and then there was this much volume here in quantity, right? So technically, a little volume, a lot of volume, relatively speaking, for the 2-hour time frame for this, whatever this asset is. I don't even know what it is. our AR, right? Doesn't matter. But that's the volume. And then in this case, obviously, all three of these bars were led by bearish sales, right? Or shorts in this case. Or in this case, I don't even think this is a derivative. This is just spot chart for whatever this asset is on Binance. So this is just saying there was a lot of sales activity, and it was led by selling, not buying. And then over here, it was kind of the opposite. It was led by buying, not selling. And this was a 2-hour window of time that I would bet there's some nice price action on there. Or a lot of times, you know, that ends up being the case. And so if we bring all the stuff back now, so we'll start with that, with the price action. you can kind of see like right there when the volume began, like there was a nice move
Yeah.
upward. So it's kind of measuring things like that. And you can kind of see like when this volume started, it was big. I mean, it was starting, it was here. And then look at, see that large volume bar right there? Like look at
Yeah.
what that resulted in as far as like that big wick that took it down pretty dramatically, as a percentage, relative to all the rest of the price action, surrounding it. And so when I say it measures volume in a pretty sensitive way, that's pretty much what I'm talking about. So it's another metric that is really honestly just time consuming for humans to even try to look at and measure. And if, it's kind of like if you think that the checklist takes, 4 days, like you were saying, to analyze, like you can imagine trying to analyze all of this stuff, period, much less in a very real time type of situation. And so this just this one prerequisite of the movement monitor, which is right here, does that for us, right? So that's another, like, just one of the few prerequisites that it does, right? That's the volume analysis part. We talked about the trend part, which is actually analyzing the price action, looking for deviations one way or the other. And then this is very tried and true. A lot of traders use moving averages. So just about everything important that would come from moving averages is accounted for there. And then lastly, very, I would say often confused with volume analysis, but a different thing is money flow analysis. And so this is literally just taking KPIs that are measuring the actual flow of money into and out of an asset. And that's pretty much it. It's a whole lot, but the cool thing is you don't actually have to know all of it.
What
Oh, go ahead.
what's KPI?
Key performance indicator. Like I swapped that out with metric, right? Just a unit of measurement, or a thing that can be measured. And so in this case, this is one item, right? This is one algorithm that can measure like a numerous items. And
Okay.
now, what we've done is coded in
The
additional
dots, yeah.
expansion monitor data that would let you know, like right here, you'd get the old ping, right? Like if you had an alert, and we have these, right? First time blue. You could set it honestly anywhere from here to here. We haven't had any blue, no blue, no blue, no blue. So right anywhere in here, you could say, hey, you know what? I just want to know when I should short this thing. And if I happen to be awake, maybe I'll consider it. That would be my trigger. And when I say trigger, I just mean the trigger that would make me go look at the chart and see if I want to short it. When I say trigger, I don't mean that would make me go short it instantly, right? That would be more like, here's where I decide I want to look at it because I got the alert. This is my trigger, so to speak, which is great. That's an important step in the process. And then there may be a different place that is actually my intelligent entry, right? Whatever that is. Maybe it's the first expansion dot, right? In the case of this trader. Let me delete some of this. So right, like somebody could get notified on this 2-hour time frame that, hey, this is when the first time blue occurred in the trade conditions. Again, only in this time frame, but still valuable, or potentially conducive to going short. Nowhere else since here, which was kind of a fake out, which is why
Yeah.
we need to use multiple time frames to decide what to do. But also notice there was no expansion dot here, right? So we're getting better and better at finding like ways to avoid getting faked out and doing dumb things. And so this could be my trigger, which was at, let's see, I'm going to bring this over here, kind of making it kind of real here. This was my trigger, which was at 7 o'clock at night, my time, right? So I don't know if I would even mess with this, right? Supposing I have numerous alarms set, I have numerous opportunities. That's the goal for, I think, our group. And so if this was just one of my many opportunities, which is I have alarms pinging quite often, and they're just opportunities is all they are. It's not the end of the world if I miss one. I miss a lot any given meeting that I take, and it's fine because there's always more. But here at 7 o'clock, if my trigger happened, then I go, okay, this one could be good. Now I would probably consider like, when do I maybe want to jump into this? And so this one here, again, just totally up to the individual, but this one here might give me a little bit of a heads up that, okay, I like that for my trigger, and now I'm going to set another alert for when does the expansion dot show up. I happen to never be awake at 1 in the morning. So if this occurred at 1 in the morning, I'd miss it and I'd be okay with it. Or I'd see it and then I'd wake up over here at, actually, I wake up a little earlier. So I would actually see it and then I'd actually probably go look at it, and maybe as early as 07, I would go consider it, and I would ask myself, like, one of the things I ask myself is, did I, from the time that pinged, which was right here in price, did I really miss a move? Because now I'm awake. I'm like, well, this is a highly volatile asset and it's only moved negative 0.84. I have not missed the move. And so this is where I would go and I would look at the data on something like the conditions conducive monitor and see if, does it make sense on other time frames to jump into that. So we're going to talk about that too, because I think this, I can kind of see where this will go, and I feel like we're making good headway here. But this is a little data on just purely the power of the movement monitor, and just going over here and setting an alert and just saying, movement monitor, first time blue, wake me up or ping me whenever I have this opportunity. And then it would be like, it's never just go and short it. It's more like potential short opportunity, right? And then I could even give more info, 2-hour time frame. And that's it, right? I would know what it was. I could also put blue movement monitor. And then over here, this is cool because I could write a custom message to myself. So I've done a couple videos on this so that you'll have more places you can kind of see what kind of messages. But I could put like, see if a short makes sense. I could literally write anything I want, and then that's what I would get. I would create this, and if I did that as is, it would ping me at this yellow vertical line. That's about when this would go off. Again, it's 7 o'clock at night. I tend to not enter trades late in the evening. Some of these guys do, and they're up till 1 watching them. People can live however they want, but that's the beauty of this, right? I would get alerted maybe at this time, maybe a little later. I'd probably wake up in the morning. I'd probably honestly be assessing it somewhere in these 2 candles, to be honest, like 5, more likely 7 is when I would probably be around a computer. I'm making coffee at like 5 something. So I probably wouldn't be around a computer for a little bit, but I would measure the move and I'd say, did I miss this? Is this still possible? If not, like, go look at this conditions conducive monitor and see if you want to take a trade. So that's movement monitor.